All right, today I am talking to strength training expert Geoff Neupert. He's an expert in functional training, movement education, and really, in my opinion, stands apart in all of these things. He's a master RKC instructor, which stands for Russian Kettlebell Challenge, former Division I strength coach at Rutgers University, national level Olympic lifter, personal trainer, logging more than 21,000 hours in one-on-one training experience. Literally, when Geoff talks strength training, you really should listen. So, welcome, Geoff.
Hey, Nick, thanks for having me. I should
Absolutely.
probably should update that bio. Not a master kettlebell instructor anymore for the RKC.
I gotcha.
Yeah, probably should have updated that. So, yeah, we moved over to Strong first, and I was a master kettlebell instructor over there, and then I resigned that last summer to focus on my one of my other businesses. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, but yeah, thanks for having me on. It's
Yeah,
great to be
absolutely.
here. Great to
Absolutely.
be.
Finally get a chance to talk to you one-on-one here in an interview. That's awesome. Um, Let me get started here. The first question I always ask people, and to me, I think it gives a better idea of what people are about, is what really got you started in training originally? Like what kind of training you focused on? What was really the
Mm.
catalyst to get you going?
Wrestling. High school wrestling. I started lifting weights when I was about 15, and then what really started me uh, into the iron game, like the deep dive in the iron game, was I broke my arm
Mm.
6 days before our high school championships, and yeah, I spent like probably about 9 or 12 weeks in a cast, and from there, that was it. I made my mind up. I said, you know what, I'm I'm going to go up a weight class and I'm going to win the whole thing next year, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. So I would get up early, travel with my dad into work, pack up, all my weightlifting gear, and which at that time, was I can't remember if I had gloves back then or not, but I'm 16 years old. I got my belt, and I got my towel for the gym, and
Yeah, you're geared.
spare clothes, and then I'd work out in the morning sometimes, and then I'd go to work. This is summertime, so then I'd go to work, and then definitely go to the gym in the afternoon, and I ended up bumping up 2 weight classes. So I put on like 15 pounds of muscle without really even knowing what I was doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, was it mostly like bodybuilding training that you were targeting there?
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
was gym rat training. It was
Yeah.
the he said, she said thing. It was,
Yeah.
hey, you got to do the bench presses. It was primarily upper body. So it was,
Yeah.
bench press, military press, behind the neck press, pull ups, dips, that sort of thing. And then, to get in shape for wrestling, I ran cross country my senior year of high school. And sometimes I would skip practice and go to the weight room instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably do better for you that way too,
That's
actually, to be
right. That's
honest.
right. But you know
Yeah.
what? When that final year rolled around, I hit the mat. I was in great shape, and
Yeah.
I was killing people. So
Good. Yeah. It seems like you were doing a lot of good basic exercises there, good basic training. So,
yeah, except I
yeah.
forgot about the leg part. I didn't
Yeah.
train legs for about 2 years until I think I was
Did
a sophomore in college, something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I've seen that happen before. You're not the first one. So that riding the chicken look is great, but
Yeah, that's right. You look
yeah,
like a light bulb.
yeah. No,
So,
it's yeah. I've seen that way too many times, but it's good you kind of caught on to the power and benefits of leg training. So it's
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
now what kind of moved you in towards the Olympic lifting and the kettlebell stuff?
Well, the kettlebell stuff that wasn't until about 1998. I first picked that up, but the Olympic lifting stuff came. When I graduated from high school, I was about 165 pounds, and I got bitten by the powerlifting bug. So I just ate and lifted. And when I wasn't eating or lifting, I was sleeping. Uh, I went to class sometimes. The college years were good. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
in about 3.5 years, I went from 165 pounds to 252 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's pretty big. And I was definitely muscular, but I was carrying some chub for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and somebody told me, for your height and weight to be competitive, you got to be 275 pounds. Yeah. I thought, man, I'm having a hard time going upstairs without getting out of breath. My knees always hurt. My knees had always hurt anyway. Since I was about 12 or 13, I was going to the doctors for knee pain. And so I went to one doctor. I went to an orthopedic specialist on campus, and he gave me short, like terminal knee extensions and, short arc, excuse me. They weren't terminal because my foot wasn't on the floor, excuse me. So short arc knee extensions and short arc leg curls. I almost forgot the name of the exercise. I haven't done them in probably since then, you know?
Yeah.
So this is back in 94, right? So this is 21 years ago. Eesh. Just bear with me for a while I mourn of that time. And he gave me short arc, like very, very short range of motion squats. And what had happened was I built the lateralis, the vastus lateralis up really good. I had meaty adductors and a big butt, but I had no vastus medialis, no teardrop. And I don't know how I saw Olympic lifters, but I looked at them and they had just huge legs. And all they did was squat butt to ankles, which, you know, back in 94, that was no bueno, right? I mean, you didn't do that. I mean, you kept your shins perpendicular, right?
It's heresy.
Yeah, your knee stayed right over your ankle. You pushed your butt back and you didn't go past parallel unless you were a power lifter. Otherwise, you know, it was like crossing the streams in Ghostbusters. Your whole world would just implode.
Oh, you're waiting for your kneecaps to shoot off into the left field.
Yeah. And you know, I remember some of the athletic trainers at Rutgers were saying, oh, you know, that's bad, you know, the bad things will happen. And I'm looking at them and they're skinny and weak and broken. And I'm looking at these Olympic lifters who have huge legs. I mean, their legs are just massive. And I said, well, you know what? You're skinny, weak, and broken. And these guys are massive, and they have exactly the legs that I want. And they have that coveted teardrop. So I'm going to teach myself how to squat like an Olympic lifter. Yeah. And basically I did. I transitioned out of a low bar powerlifting squat and taught myself, I repatterned my squat and then taught myself the Olympic squat. And I did that for, well, probably about 6-9 months, something like that. And then I was thinking about, I was already doing hang cleans, you know, I was on like a football hybrid powerlifting program, and it's already pretty strong. I'm going to do 315 for sets of 5 and 4 and 5 reps.
Nice.
Excuse me. And so I had the Olympic lifting on the back of my head, and then I went to Ukraine on a missions trip in 94, and we trained with their weightlifters. And I was training for powerlifting, and their weightlifting coach sat me down with you know, the head of our team and the athletic director and an interpreter, and we had a closed door meeting, and he offered me a scholarship to stay in Ukraine. He said, you know, I'd like you to stay here. I'll turn you into champion. And I thought, okay, that's cool. Thank you very much, but I don't really want to live in a foreign country at, you know, 21 years old, 20 years old, or however it was, 21 at the time. So excuse me, that was 93. No, that was 94. Man, this getting old thing messes with me.
It's terrible, isn't it?
94. And so basically, I came home, and around January 90, I thought about it for about 6 months. In January 95, I called up a weightlifting coach. I was living in New Jersey, and local weightlifting coach, a guy named Mark Cohen, and went up there and saw him, and he said the same thing. He goes, well, you know, you got the potential to be a champion, and that was it. Of course, I'm not a champion, so there were a lot of things that happened along the way. You know, the body just fell apart. Yeah. And then in 98, I was a strength coach at Rutgers University, and I saw the kettle stack in the back of it was an Iron Mind advertisement in the back of a Muscle and Fiction magazine. I mean, Muscle and Fitness magazine. And I thought, man, this would be great for my wrestlers. I mean, they could really load up their glutes and hamstrings. Too bad we don't have any money. So I started doing one-arm Olympic lifts with, you know, dumbbells. And 2000, was it 2000? 2000, my wife got into graduate school at Duke University for physical therapy, and we moved down to Durham, North Carolina. And I did a little bit of personal training. In 2001, I really jumped in and opened up my own business, and like my own real business instead of just training, you know. Yeah. And saw, you know, Pavel Satsulin's stuff at Dragon Door in his RKC book, and it was sitting on the back of my mind, and I'm not one to make decisions quickly, unless they're, you know, life threatening. Yeah. You know, I can make a quick decision in that case, but I really like to think through and do the Ben Franklin thing, pros and cons. And So January 2002, I ordered, the RKC, the Russian Kettlebell Challenge book, and the VHS. I mean, that's how long ago this was, right?
Yeah.
And I got my starter set of kettlebells, which is a 4 kilo, an 8 kilo, a 16 kilo, a 24 kilo, and a 32 kilo. And while I was waiting, I was just practicing doing snatches with the dumbbells in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And the first two things that hit my mind or actually, one of them hit my wrist and the other hit my lungs when I got my set of kettlebells was I tried the snatch because I'm an Olympic lifter and 70 pounds, so, 32 kilo kettlebell, which is the heaviest they made at the time was, 32 kilo kettlebell is nothing.
Yeah.
And so I'm in my living room and it says, make sure you do this outside. The instructions were, make sure you do this outside or, someplace you can drop it. And I was like,
because it's easy, man. Forget it.
It's easy.
Yeah.
32 kilos, man. I mean, I can, put a 1 in front of that and I can snatch that.
Yeah.
So, I snatch the kettlebell, it stalls up over my head and, bottom up and then flops and hits me in the back of the wrist, which was pretty excruciating.
Yeah.
If I had been in my own house, I probably would have dropped it, but it was a rental house. So I thought, all right, let me do this again. And the same thing happened. And I said, all right, enough of this mess. Let me try this swing thing out that I see this skinny Russian guy doing. Yeah. So I went on the front yard and it's only 32 kilos. So I did 20. It was really easy. Back then we were going up over the head and I put it down. I thought, that's not so bad. And literally about 3 seconds later, it felt like somebody punched me in the gut as all the air got sucked, or I was trying to suck all the air out of the universe, like this. Yeah. And then I walked over to my car and put my hands on my car and bent over and thought, wow, man, this is really good. It reminds me of wrestling. So this will be great. So, that was my first personal introduction to kettlebells. And, the reason it took me so long to get them is as an Olympic lifter, nothing creates or helps you generate more power than the Olympic lifts. But the problem is they're technical. And when you're training 30-plus-year-old office workers in enclosed spaces without any special equipment or, like the platform or the bumper plates, and plus they're stiff and achy and creaky. The Olympic lifts aren't really that great for them. And so what I saw the kettlebell was a simple, easier way to teach the Olympic lifts. Plus, it got the strength and endurance component, which is what most people need in their daily lives. So that's the long story long about Olympic weightlifting and kettlebell training. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my first experience with the kettlebell snatch was kind of similar where like, that seems pretty easy. It was like a light 25-pound kettlebell. It wasn't even anything like heavy at all. And I flung that thing up and it swung around and whacked me on the wrist so hard. I was like, geez. So that's when I decided to learn how to do it properly.
Yeah.
And then I kind of moved on from there. And now it's a whole different ballgame. But that introduction can be a sharp one if you're not introduced properly to it.
Yeah, it can get your attention. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Now, here's a quick question for you. You mentioned powerlifting and Olympic lifting specifically. This is your chance to get some street cred. What are some of your biggest numbers, biggest lifts on those?
I did 390 with a pause and a bench press, when I was 19. I weigh in 216. That was the only powerlifting meet I did. The issue with the powerlifting meet was, one, I was young and I didn't know they had, I'm not sure if they had them back then. So this is, early mid 90s, push-pull meets, right? Oh, yeah. They started, I became aware of later on. I always had this chronic knee pain issue. So I could squat a little bit and then my knees would really flare up and, you'd have, just walking up the stairs would be really painful.
Yeah.
And let's see, snatch and clean and jerk, 130 in the snatch and 160, 130 kilos, so 286, and then 160, 352 in the clean and jerk. That was good enough to qualify me for nationals in 2000. Yeah. So my gym lifts were better, but it doesn't count, right?
Yeah, never counts. It's still official. Yeah.
That's right.
Unless it's on video these days, then gym lift counts.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't have video recorders back then, so at least not on the phones.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for people who can lift that much weight over their head and not have it come crashing down, because that's a lot of skill and a lot of technique involved in that and a lot of practice.
It is. So the most frustrating thing for me was dealing with all the injuries that, if I didn't have the injuries and my body worked correctly the way it was supposed to, it's always easy to armchair quarterback and live in the past, right? But
Yeah.
I'm sure those numbers would have been a lot higher.
Yeah.
So
Now here's something kind of sort of related to that, and feel free to just say you don't want to comment. But what do you think of the CrossFit snatches and clean and presses and stuff like that? Just out of curiosity.
I don't keep up too much with them. I know there's some top guys, like Rich Froning. There was a guy that came across my YouTube feed the other day. Can't remember his name. And some of those guys have some really good technique and are really strong. Like Rich Froning, I think he snatched 308, weighing about 205, something like that. And that's decent. That would qualify him for nationals. I don't know what his clean and jerk was. I think it was 374, which is 170 kilos. I think that would qualify him for nationals.
Nice.
So pretty decent. You'll find that the top guys are really good technicians and they're really strong because they have to be the top guys, right?
Yeah, for sure. And to stay healthy and to not, kill themselves, basically. Yeah.
But what people don't realize is those top guys, I mean, they're professional athletes. That's what they do. They all have sponsors. Rich Froning, I believe, does not work. You look at his training schedule, he works out, 3 times a day, sometimes more. He's got all the supplement companies sponsoring him, which is, God bless him, man. Glad he could do it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. I got nothing against CrossFit as long as technique is good. That's really my only hitch with CrossFit is sometimes the instruction is just not there, especially for the Olympic lifting.
Well, a lot of times the instruction is just not there. I mean, they take, but the same is true for anything. I mean, USA weightlifting. I mean, you take a club coach course. I could sit here and rail on, the CrossFit one day, Olympic lifting coach courses, and you see some of what comes out of there. I mean, I had a colleague I worked with at Rutgers, and she was a former like Rutgers Hall of Fame hockey player, field hockey player. She took the USA weightlifting club coach course. She couldn't do a clean with a bar.
Oh, wow.
So, a lot of it is how much the individual can soak up. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a lot of bad material out there, but a lot of it is also how does the individual learn and what can they soak up from the course.
Exactly. So, and how much can they then progress and teach other people to do properly too.
Right.
That's that can be an issue in just like I said, every sport, and not only like weightlifting, but CrossFit and everything. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, no, that's one thing I always like to ask people who especially are involved in technical lifting like weightlifting and stuff is, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's great what CrossFit has done for people, for just fitness in general, but at the same time there are some hitches that could be more helpful.
Yeah, I tell you the one thing there are two things I really like about CrossFit, and it's interesting because coming from like the kettlebell niche, like if you're in the kettlebell niche, there's a lot of animosity between like the kettlebell guys and the CrossFit guys, more probably on the kettlebell side than the CrossFit side. But the two things that I really like are, first, CrossFit has done more for exposing quote unquote regular people to the benefits of true exercise / training than any other system I can think of in the last 15 years. I mean, right, you've got, up until CrossFit showed up, you had health clubs, right, where the still commonplace in the health club is the machine circuit, one set of 12 to 15 reps or 10 to 12 reps or 10 to 20 reps, right, depending on whose protocols you're using, whether or not they're American College of Sports Medicine or you're using somebody's variation of high intensity training, right? So you've got that, and then and that's for the guys, right? Because women don't want to bulk up, so they have to go to the aerobics classes, right? Get their cardio to get that long, lean muscle. CrossFit is slowly eroding that brainwashing, for lack of a better word. It's showing
what it is,
brainwashing and bad science, right? I mean, it's just
toned up, lean, sculpted muscle.
Yeah, long, lean, sculpted Gwyneth Paltrow muscle. Like her trainer says, women should not use anything more than 3 pounds. Too bad.
Arm weighs more than 3 pounds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and what do they do to carry their kids, right? Put your kid on your hip, right? That's more than 3 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
The kid wasn't 3 pounds. It was 3 pounds and was about 6 months old in the womb.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, so CrossFit is basically destroying that dogma, right? That outdated dogma. It's showing that women can be lean and strong and quote unquote toned and still remain their, still keep their curves. And it's showing that, men don't have to look like bloated, pus bag filled bodybuilders, to, and train that way to get strong. They can have lean, for lack of a better term, functional, athletic strength. And so that's
muscle. Yeah.
Spartan muscle. There you go. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is Olympic lifting was a dead sport until CrossFit came along. And I mean, no offense to the women listening to this, but there are no men participating in Olympic lifting really in the last 20 years. And so the sport in America shifted to focusing on women because there aren't any bigger, faster, stronger sports for women. The bigger, faster, stronger sports for men are obviously football and basketball. So we don't have anything like that for women. Yeah, I know there's a WNBA league, but is that even still alive? And who watches it, right? I mean,
I have no idea, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. No idea. And so, women were getting into that. And it was women who were keeping the sport alive in the U.S. And that's not meant to be demeaning. That's just factual, right? But now we're seeing the return of men into Olympic weightlifting competitions in America. And the sport is starting to come alive again. So
yeah, it's really good too because it's really good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great sport. Love it.
Yeah, there's not much more athletic than that as far as I'm concerned, as far as like a application of force and coordination and technique and just flat out power and strength all wrapped up into one. I mean, powerlifting is great in that you lift a lot of heavy weights, and has a lot of technique too, but it's not nearly to the same level as weightlifting, in my opinion, as far as technique goes. Yeah.
Well, it's not, and it's a misnomer too. It's not. It shouldn't be called powerlifting, right? Because power is a measure of work, right? And the actual work performed by measuring wattage in powerlifting is very, very low compared to Olympic lifting. So powerlifting really should be called force lifting, right, or strength lifting or something like that. But not to take anything away from powerlifters, let's just call it what it is, though.
Yeah.
Right. But you're spot on with Olympic lifting. And when I say that, that's actually my personal thought. When I say that to people, they just give me a blank stare, like, So, what do you mean? Isn't rhythmic gymnastics or whatever it is? So I mean, your coordination and your power output and your agility and your mobility have just got to be exceptional to be able to rip 1.5 times your body weight off the floor in one motion and get underneath it, or jerk twice your body weight overhead.
Oh yeah. So, when the Olympics are on, and it's unfortunate you only get to see it every 4 years, but I just love watching the weightlifting events. That's just poetry in motion to me. It's just magical to watch these guys lift like literally like 1.5 to twice their body weight. Yep. Boom, like it's nothing. And,
Yeah. Well, the good news is you don't have to wait for the Olympics. You can go to, they have specialized websites now, like All Things Gym. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I haven't seen it, no.
It's an awesome website. A German guy runs it, allthingsgym.com. He literally posts videos up there several times a week from different teams around the world. And so you get to watch elite Olympic lifters train. And it's just, it's awesome. Awesome stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah. I have to check that out. What was I going to say? Now, I was curious how you decided to go into strength coaching, like the strength and conditioning at Rutgers. Like, how did that kind of fall into place for you?
That's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that answer in a long time. I was into powerlifting, right? I was trying to get into powerlifting. There was the Rutgers football strength and conditioning coach. Back in '93, was a guy named Rock Gullickson, and he was big dude. He's an ex-powerlifter. I think he had like an 800-pound deadlift. Legit dude. I went over there one summer, and I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, I hear you're an ex-powerlifter. I really want to get into powerlifting. Here are my lifts." And he said, "Sure, no problem. You can train with me and a couple of guys around here." And he said, "Here, just use this program." He gave me the football program, and I lifted with them. That was summer of '93. And I loved what he did and the way, I just loved his job. And I thought, I want to do that. That's really cool. Yeah. And I was hanging out in the gym all the time anyway, so it just seemed like a good fit.
Get paid for it.
Yeah. And I had been training people. So it was summer '93. So that fall when I came back, I got a job at the school gym, and started training people with powerlifting. I mean, not in powerlifting, but training the guys in the gym, and I have a couple training partners, and so I mean that's really where it gets started. And then so I trained out of the school gyms from '93 to '95, and then I got some jobs in some local gyms, and then I went into New York City and trained up there at some pretty fancy gyms. One of them's no longer around. That was the Executive Fitness Center. It was rated like the #1 fitness center in, I want to say, the Northeast or something like that. It was real fancy and posh. It sat on top of the 28th floor of the Marriott at the World Trade Center complex. So
wow.
yeah, so when one of those towers came down, I went right through there, and that was it. Over.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was dating a girl who was a volleyball player, and I had mentioned the athletic trainers at Rutgers before, so I was familiar with a lot of the athletic training staff, and I'm not exactly sure how I got hooked up with her coach, but I was friends with one of the strength coaches. Oh, I know how I did. I started training some of the wrestlers, because the strength coach at the time was no bueno, right? Didn't really know strength, knew speed and agility, but didn't know strength. And so I started training some of the wrestlers, and they started getting great results. And I started training my wife's team. I became a volunteer strength coach for my wife's team. I'm trying to think. It's January '96, I think. And her coach she let me take over all the strength training for the team, and bypassed the Rutgers staff altogether, which was pretty huge.
Yeah. Because
she just wasn't getting the attention. And at the time, it makes you feel really great. But now being out of it, what is this? Almost 20 years later. I mean, the staff, there was basically zero budget for the strength and conditioning programs at Rutgers. Whatever budget there was went to the football center and the football team and the basketball team, and everybody else was just kind of
scraps.
You get the scraps, you get the leftovers.
Yeah.
And so one strength coach is responsible for, I'm trying to think how many teams Tommy was running, like 32 teams, something like that. Wow. We had 35, 37 teams at Rutgers at one point. And the football, we had two staffs, the football staff and the Olympic staff. And the football staff took football, men's and women's lacrosse, swimming, diving, and I think women's field hockey. So however many sports that is, that's like 5 sports. And basically everybody got the football program, right? They just erased football and wrote field hockey up there. I'm not sure why field hockey players have to do power cleans when they spend all their time running and bent over. You know what I'm saying?
Some specificity lacking there.
Yeah. It's just, a convenience. And then, my buddy Tom, who was the strength coach at the time, he had 29 teams to run, something like that. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And he was part-time, and then they made him full-time. And so long story short, they had a new women's basketball coach, who was a Hall of Famer, and they had a new men's basketball coach, and they really wanted some more attention in the strength and conditioning department. So they did some arm twisting with the new athletic director, and they got a new spot in the strength and conditioning strength and conditioning team. And because had already been, everybody knew me there, right? The strength coach already knew me, and the volleyball coach already knew me. They basically said, "Yeah, we need this guy." And I did a really great job with, if I don't mind saying so myself, I did a really great job with the volleyball team.
Yeah.
And so I picked that up, and when was that? I guess it was May of '96, May of '97. That's what it was. May of '97, started working there. I think that's so long ago. You're making me think about this stuff. So basically, I was there for about 3.5 years, something like that. January '97 to May of '97 as a volunteer, and then And at that time, I was training I was in charge of the volleyball team, but I was also still training some wrestlers on the, on the side.
Yeah.
And then when I got there, part-time, and then part-time in May, and then full-time by September, something like that. I mean,
Nice,
it was pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, you had to prove yourself essentially, work your way into it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, a lot of volunteer time, but I didn't mind. I mean, it's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. No, it's good on all counts with that.
Yeah, man, it was an awesome experience. The pay sucked, and the hours were terrible.
Yeah.
But it was awesome, man. I learned so much, and it really set the stage for my personal training businesses were built off of what I learned as a college strength coach.
Oh yeah. There's nothing like working with a lot of athletes of different shapes and sizes and strength levels and different issues and problems and injuries to get you going in that direction a lot of problem solving, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Tons of problem solving. Yeah. So yeah, especially when you've got your 6-week periodized plan line right in front of you, and the basketball coach gets pissed at am I allowed to say pissed? Gets mad at his players, and it makes them run 17s. You know what 17s are?
No.
It's the width of a basketball court 17 times.
Oh yeah.
And you got to do it in like a certain time, and then his work rest ratio was inverted. And so he'd make them do like 10 of those until they puke. And they were supposed to lift that day. So do you think they lifted that day?
Not even their arms, I don't think.
No, not really. Like, you guys go in and see the strength coach. So they'd come into the gym, and we'd be like, yeah, all right, come on in. And we'd come in, they'd come in, and we'd shut the door, and we'd go, okay, you guys just take a seat and lie down, right? Or lie down. And that was their workout.
Here's your training for today is just to lie down quietly in the corner and try not to heave.
They're quivering, They're just so gray they're about to puke if they didn't puke before.
Yeah, no point in doing anything with them then. Yeah,
you learn a lot. That's for sure.
Interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the kind of strength coach stuff. I never got into that much in college at all, but it's always been fascinating to me as well. I primarily focused on my own training and just helping a few other people, but there were a few good coaches there where I was at. They actually had Olympic lifting platforms and bumper plates at the university gym where I had, and that was basically unheard of in most gyms where I was at.
That's amazing. So, I mean, a lot happened while I was at Rutgers. I mean, we got when I was there, we had 2 weight rooms. There were 3 weight rooms. The Hale Center, which is where the football team and the football staff worked out at, and they got all the fancy stuff and all the new stuff. And then we had the RAC, which is Rutgers Athletic Center, which is where the basketball teams were housed. And then we had the College Ave Gym, which is where who was over there? Wrestling, volleyball, gymnastics, the crew teams. Yeah, and then so whoever was at the RAC was the other 20-some teams that I didn't mention. And it was interesting because as late as 97, the RAC had it was just they had concrete blocks as the wall, and there was no ceiling, and there was no air conditioning. The ceiling was actually the ceiling of the RAC, and there's no air conditioning in there. So in the summers, it would get up 90 plus with 90 plus, humidity. Yeah. And this is a Division I school, all right, approaching the 21st century. Yeah. And so I guess it was 98 they decided to, renovate the RAC weight room. And so they put a ceiling on it, and it was great. My boss just gave me carte blanche. He said, here, design this. So I said, okay. So I got to design a brand new weight room. They blew out the weight room. It doubled or tripled its size, and in came all the Samson half power racks with the platforms, and it was great. Bumper plates. It was awesome, man. I loved it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's must have been like a kid in a candy store when you got that.
I was because we had one platform at that time, and it sat over in the corner. And if I wasn't using it, it was usually collecting dust, right? Or my athletes weren't using it. It was usually collecting dust.
Yeah.
So, and then suddenly I think, what do we have, 9? It was pretty awesome, man. It was like 9. You've seen those half racks, right? So it's like, it's almost like those old York racks, and then they stick a platform on the front of it, and you can put all kinds of attachments on it. Oh, they were beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. So we can walk down memory lane and all these things at the...
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Now, I want to kind of come back to one thing you had mentioned before about Olympic lifting being a bit inaccessible to a lot of people, not only because of their own personal, issues, but, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who wanted to get started in Olympic lifting, wanted to try it out?
Find a coach. Don't do it alone. Don't YouTube it or any of that stuff. Go to the USA Weightlifting website, which I think is still usaweightlifting.org. Click on your state, find somebody, find a local weightlifting club, go down and get coached up. That's what I did. That's the best way to learn. Mm. And yeah, that's what I would do. Yeah, I'd say you could try your local CrossFit box, but that's not their focus. Their focus is CrossFit.
You might get lucky and get somebody who does know what they're doing, but you might not as well.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. I think, especially for Olympic lifting, because you're lifting heavy things around. It's not just like jumping on a stationary bike and pedaling, obviously. So it's more technique to it involved. Yeah.
There's a lot more technique, and there's a method to the madness, and the way they train a 12-year-old in Russia is not the way they train a 30-year-old or a 25-year-old here in America, and certainly not a 40-year-old. And let me just say, if you're over 40 and you've been riding a desk and you look like a chair, you have no business doing Olympic lifts, because you can do it once, right?
That's all you need.
You can do anything once, as one of my good friends likes to say. You can do anything once. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I would say. Go get coached up.
Yeah. Kind of on that note as well. In terms of your experience with Olympic lifting, what do you think the biggest error that people make in their technique is? Like, say, people who are getting coached and just kind of working up to developing their strength. What's the biggest issue or the biggest error you see people making with that?
Wow, man, I haven't thought about that in years either. It's probably, keep it simple. Most people who move into Olympic lifts are former gym rats, right? Mm-hmm. And so it would be probably pulling with your arms and not extending your torso, and not using your legs and pushing the platform away from you. So trying to over muscle the lifts with the upper body, probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot. I've been to a couple of gyms where people have been trying to do Olympic lifting, and I've noticed that they don't consider their arms, or they do consider their arms as a big part of the lift. They're doing a power clean by doing a reverse curl and stuff like that. Yeah, it's like you got to kind of imagine that your arm is just connecting your shoulder to the weight, and then the power comes out of your legs and your back.
That's right. The hips drive and the arms guide, as we like to say in the kettlebell world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's I totally agree with that advice. And for me personally, I haven't done a whole lot of Olympic weightlifting. I've always been interested in that too, but it's not something I would ever teach anybody, because I don't have nearly enough coaching experience or experience actually doing the lifts too. So that's an interesting point for me to get for myself there as well. And I use power cleans and stuff like that, but it's not the same thing as actual Olympic weightlifting at all.
Yeah, and that's the primary issue. The secondary issue is people get too caught up in the weight. Mm-hmm. So
trying to do too much too soon, kind of thing.
Yeah, too much too soon. They're more concerned with the weight instead of how you move the weight. Mm-hmm. So if you focus on how you move the weight, you'll definitely be able to move the weight. But if you focus on moving the weight, right, it's a toss-up. So technique is really the key, which is why I say, don't pull with your arms and go down to a local weightlifting club. Get coached up.
Yeah, and get your technique stable before you start to increase the weight.
Absolutely.
That's you see even top guys missing lifts, so it's never a lock even when you've been practicing for years and years. So
that's right. Yeah. That's right. Those top guys have been training every day, sometimes multiple times a day for about 8 to 12 years before you see them on, late night ESPN or whatever it is we see them these days. Yeah.
Now, kind of on the same note, in terms of kettlebell training, what do you think the biggest mistake people make in kettlebell training is?
Same thing, using their arms or, using their lower back instead of using their hips. Mm-hmm. That's the number one mistake. So, and then the number two mistake is focusing on the kettlebell instead of focusing on their body. Because the kettlebell, it's really interesting, just like the barbell, but you see it more so with the kettlebell, I think, is it responds to what your body does. So it only does what you tell it to do. So if the kettlebell ends up someplace you don't want it, that's because you aren't telling it to do the right thing. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it reacts to the movement that you put into it. So
that's exactly right. Yeah. So the simplest kettlebell exercise to do is the swing, and you literally hinge or fold at the hips, hike past the kettlebell underneath your body, push your feet in the floor, snap your hips, so that you're moving from a bent over position into a straight position again. So you're vertical or perpendicular with the floor, and the kettlebell just rockets out from the pocket, as we call it, which is the space between your hips, and goes wherever you decide to put it. However much force you put into that floor is how much force recoils back, ground reaction force we call it, and that's what drives the kettlebell.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the swing, now that you mention it, what height do you usually swing to?
Chest.
Chest, yeah.
Chest, maybe slightly higher, sometimes eye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always been my height as well. I don't know why people want to do. I mean, I know why they do with the overhead stuff because of the CrossFit full range of motion thing, but it's just a nightmare waiting to happen as far as I'm concerned. So it's yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people don't have the hip mobility, right? So they end up hyperextending their back. And they certainly don't have the shoulder mobility or shoulder stability. So when that kettlebell comes up over the head, they lose what we call the packed shoulders. So the shoulders no longer sit in their sockets. The arms internally rotate. Their shoulders shrug up. Their chest drop. And it's really, really bad on your rotator cuff, especially your supraspinatus tendon, or supraspinatus tendon that runs across. It passes under the acromioclavicular joint, which is about 2.5 millimeters to 3 millimeters. That's how big your gap is. And when you put your arm over your head, I don't know if you can see it, and do that, it closes that gap. So there's nothing.
Just pinches it.
Yeah, nothing as exciting as having your tendons pinched off by your bones.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels great.
Yeah.
Done that before.
And even then, when you're bringing that kettlebell all the way back down, that's putting a lot of torque on your lower back at the bottom to reverse that swing. So
yeah, most people can't tame the arc, and so they end up you're really cranking on the lower backs on the way down. So they don't understand that this is an advanced kettlebell technique, but it's a common mistake. Is most people fold their hips too soon on the backswing. So as soon as the kettlebell reaches perpendicular to the floor, in order to get it back down, they start folding at the hip instead of letting the arms ride down, reattach themselves to the torso, and then fold at the hip.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally does, yeah. And I can see that with the timing too, because especially with people who are just starting out with the swings, just visualizing that, there's a tendency to do that for sure.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar to how people come down into a squat by bending their knees first instead of sitting back with their butt first. So I think it's the same kind of idea.
Hey, now it depends on who you're talking to about squatting and what their opinions are of squatting as to whether or not that's kosher. So a power lifter will tell you push your butt back. An Olympic lifter will break at the knees first.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, there's so many different variations and methods, and interesting. I'll have to take a look at Olympic weightlifting squat again here to get the visual on that. So.
Yeah, you watch the Chinese especially, man. They're really, what they do is they set their backs, and you see them break at the knee first, and then you'll see the hip follow the knee. So the knee leads the way, and then they sit literally between their legs, or sit between their feet. So their torso is really upright, and then their tibia foot angle is really severe. It's very, very acute like that, versus a powerlifting squat, which the tibia tend to be more upright, which means you've got to push your butt back first.
Yeah. Just visualizing the whole thing, that makes total sense with the Olympic weightlifting. You got to keep that position, so you got to break at the knees first if you sit back. Then you're doing an overhead squat with your arms way the hell back there, so it's not gonna.
You're not gonna maintain that rack position.
No, you're not at all. No.
If your butt's out behind you, that weight's gonna come right down on top of you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I always learn a lot, man. I think that's important.
So do I. I mean, you got to keep learning, otherwise you die, right? And you're dead. As soon as you think you know everything in this business, you may as well just hang up. Hang it up, because you don't. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the visualization on that, because I'm looking at that, and I come up with so many different variations of everything. It's just like I take all this stuff and I process it, and I'll spit out 5 new exercises tomorrow based on it. So
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna see something here in the next couple of days where you're gonna.
I'll probably
pinnacle drop set, I'm sure, right? With like
you're gonna be thinking here now.
To back squat, or to powerlifting squat, to good morning. I mean, it'll be pretty nasty, I'm pretty sure. So
it's the wheels are spinning here. I can smell the smoke.
Mad scientist of muscle building right there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's yeah. I'm gonna have to do some looking on proper technique here for a weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting squat too. So
Yeah.
excellent. Now here's a question for you related to Olympic lifting is or strength training just in general. In terms of fat loss, do you find that you can lose fat very effectively with just strength training, or do you think you need some cardio as well?
I hate cardio.
Yeah, I do.
You want cardio? Cut your rest between sets. That's cardio.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. All my programming for fat loss is it's all strength based, strength dominant, and that's very simple because the biggest muscle fibers and the biggest motor units in your body are type 2B fast twitch. Some might argue it's type 2X. I can't remember where those lie, but basically these are the fast twitch muscle fibers.
hmm.
And they are responsible for you lifting the most weight or running as fast as possible. All right. And the reason that's important is because they use the most energy. Right. So
Yeah,
if we look at the structure and the function, they're the biggest, they're the strongest, and they use the most energy. So I want to target those when I'm doing my strength training. And that's important because really all adaptation comes down to your ability to perform and recover from work. So by targeting type 2B fast twitch muscle fibers, I can do more work than I can if I'm doing high rep stuff.
yeah. And from a mental perspective, it's way more fun.
Yeah, well, it can be. It's some idiot throws in like a 1 minute rest period between sets of sets of 2 reps at 85% of your max. Then it's not quite so fun. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know anybody who'd do something like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think either of us would ever even consider that.
No, not at all. No, no. Yeah, but yeah, that's all my programming is based around is strength based fat loss,
Yeah,
or to call it performance based fat loss, right? So
yeah,
you can still perform, and if you
uh,
want your cardio, you can do that afterwards, or like I said, you can cut your rest between sets.
mm,
Um, Interesting side note: this was back when I was working in New York City as a strength coach, or excuse me, as a personal trainer. I think I was working part time as a strength coach for volleyball at the time. Um, so it was 96, 97, somewhere around there, and I just wanted to see like how high your heart rate could go. And so I had I'm trying to think what I had in the bar. Maybe it was only like 365, something like that. I weighed about 207 at the time. Um, and I did 5 reps, and I looked at my heart rate monitor that I had on because I wanted to see what it was like. It was 177 beats per minute
mm.
from doing 5. That's pretty significant.
I think you're in the training zone there. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
might I was out of the fat burning zone for
Oh yeah,
sure.
yeah. It was just useless training you were doing. You're
That's
totally
yeah.
out of that moderate. Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah. So you spend some time there and you start spiking your heart rate. I mean, people talk about high intensity interval training. That's what strength training for fat loss is. It's
yeah.
high intensity interval training,
It's
but
totally
it's
what it is. Yeah,
it's done under load,
yeah,
so it's more beneficial for you.
yeah,
So, and you'll find if you have to train for cardio, your cardio it's there. So you're killing so many birds with one stone.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's the only type of long distance cardio that I do these days is like when I'm carrying things for like 2 miles, like heavy packs and
Yeah.
weight vests and barbells and stuff like that. That's the only time I'll ever do like any cardio over a couple minutes.
Oh, I was going to say driving, but okay.
Yeah,
Driving's
yeah,
cardio. I'm breathing,
yeah.
right?
It literally is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's awesome, and that's the way it should be, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
I, yeah, that's the way it should be.
Yeah, I
I'm a
totally
big.
agree. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm a big dragger. I mean, if I'm
Yeah.
gonna do cardio, if I'm gonna do cardio. I don't,
Hmm.
I'm doing the air quotes here. Then it would be something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the word cardio either. It just kind of makes you visualize the sitting on a bike and pedaling mindlessly. It's like conditioning work. That's to me that's more what it is.
Yes.
It's like it's cardio with purpose basically.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
it's yeah. So it's like you set yourself a goal, like you said, you drag stuff, you drag tires, I'm sure, stuff like that. You know, that's the fun stuff as far as that kind of work goes. It's, you know, and you do that with short rest periods and maybe intersperse some heavier training before or between that even, and you get some really good fat loss training right there.
Man, that's crazy talk.
Yeah.
That's crazy talk.
That's honestly, that's the stuff I've been doing myself a lot of right now in the past few months, is doing a lot of insane circuits like that, where I'm doing, like yesterday, I did a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 step down countdown ladder of trap bar deadlifts with like 400 pounds, and then, you know, floor press, dumbbell press, and then chin ups, and then front squats, and then repeat 4 reps, and then repeat 3 reps, and then 2 reps, 1 reps. So
Nice.
you're continuously no rest until basically you collapse at the end of that, and it's just murderous.
Yeah, I'm picturing that. Yeah, that's awful. What is that? 5? That's 20 sets. That's 20 sets done continuously, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Awful. Awful.
Oh, it's miserable. It's a nightmare. But it's an idea of fun.
But that's not cardio because you're not using high reps.
No, it's not cardio at all.
Yeah.
My heart rate barely got above 100. You know,
I was going to say your heart rate barely got above 200. You know that?
It really got below 200, I think is more what it was. So. Now, I have one more thing. I have a link below here. If you're looking and watching this video right now, this is a technique that you call Neuro-Metabolic Contrasts. Now, is there any way you can give us kind of an idea of what those are without giving away the whole thing? Because I want people to kind of get an idea how this works, but I also want them to go get this as well and try it out.
Okay. All right. So Neuro-Metabolic Contrasts, right? Man, there's a lot of background to this. So does this have to be fast?
Take as long as you want. This is interesting.
Okay. So here we are now. I could take an hour talking about this. All right, so basically, here's the setup for a neurometabolic contrast. Okay, your best training gains, right? And the Soviets, the Eastern Bloc, have proven this. Come from contrasting your training variables. All right, so it's basically a heavy workout followed by a light workout, followed by a heavy workout, followed by a light workout. Right. That is essentially what we talk about when we're talking about contrasts. All right. Neurometabolic contrast is a term that I coined because we're contrasting the stimuli in the nervous system. So that would be heavy light training. Okay. And the metabolic is we're contrasting stimulus in the endocrine system via the digestive system. All right. So we get a metabolic contrast. So that would be an example of contrasting high carb days with low carb days. All right. Or high calorie days with low calorie days. When you put those two things together, the strength training side and the, lack of a better term, food side, and you contrast your loading, all right, both the strength training and the eating, it leads to rapid gains, or in this case, losses in body fat. So rapid gains in strength, and also rapid losses in body fat very, very quickly.
Nice. Yeah, that's totally in line with my own experience with that kind of thing. And I love that patterning where you're doing those alternating, you're contrasting. That's incredibly effective. You're right on the money with that.
Yeah.
And so when you're watching this, just go click on that link just down below here. This will take you to a place where you can get that report on neurometabolic contrast training. This is excellent stuff, and definitely recommend you check it out. Geoff, thanks for coming on and doing this interview. This is really fascinating stuff. I love talking to people who are so in-depth in training and basically live it as a lifestyle like this, and it's their passion in life. So this has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me. It's been a blast. I could talk about this stuff for hours. Drives my wife nuts, but you know.
Mine too. Yeah. She's out of town right now.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, yeah, I appreciate it. So thank you so much for having me on, Nick.
You bet, Geoff. Thanks.